Like you said, you know, this guy. The president. Now it's gonna roll over. Gonna take.
Eric's on vacation and Tom is in Kansas. Every person. So he can take a week off.
Yeah, at least it's, yeah, your head's right to it. And the right time.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Hey, Bill,
Hello.
this is that's the only owl that's working right now?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't turn this one on.
No, that one apparently fell in the smash.
Oh, no.
So, and unfortunately, they use different cables. So that's close to we can get that one.
All right.
Yeah. So it's the-
Really?
But I'm not saying.
Like
this one. No, because of it. That. Well, we're getting close. We're just here to represent, you know, what? I don't exactly remember.
Don't exactly.
Move it over closer, so.
The cable is not long enough.
Well.
The different cable on this one.
This is USB-C, the
Oh,
other one
that-
is USB-A.
The whole process.
So,
So we need a really long C cable for the future.
We do not have.
this was discovered today at about 3:30, so
Okay.
I'm sure in the future we'll make sure we have enough cables to.
Let's move it up at least to.
Probably forgot.
I think this is.
You guys are all good? Yeah, we all here. Thanks.
Yeah.
You guys good?
Oh, we're gonna try that.
So far, everybody is on. Yeah. No,
So did you see the?
yes, I did, yeah. You guys saw the drive.
But I thought it made so much. Because then you're trying to work. Yes, please.
Yeah.
You know, like these are, handouts
Especially
for. That was a good article on the Bangor Daily News. I hope that. So now
Bangor Daily, what?
So, well, the humane has finally started looking.
Unfortunately, they don't have a good knowledge for very hard things that most people I know don't subscribe or. I don't think-
Projects and so the agricultural work that I do, is
There's
funded. Yeah, super food, agriculture. And the.
Yeah, and branch out.
Oh, it's been 2 months.
Yeah, so here
It's not ready to go. It's like the attorney general.
Had the money for the hoist for the boats and all that.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
true, our state rep,
Yeah.
Attorney
Hey,
General.
Glenn, come on in.
Yeah.
All right, well, it is 6 o'clock, so we'll get started and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. You know, this is an issue of great importance to a lot of residents. So And given that Steve Sullivan's been gracious enough to come from the state to talk to us tonight, will, came from the Augusta area to talk to us. We'll adjust our agenda so that that issue is first. So I just want to start by saying that normally when you see the five of us, we are here as the select board. But we also wear other hats for the town, which are as the assessors. And when we're acting as the Board of Assessors, assessing taxes, we're acting as agents of the state. And we have no discretion about collecting taxes that the legislature has passed and expects us to collect. So that's kind of important, I think, for people to know who are not happy about this tax. And if you have an issue about the tax, you should definitely contact Ann Matlack or Penny Beebe Gunter, our state representatives, and let them know. But as far as the select board and Board of Assessors is concerned, this is our obligation under the state constitution to collect this tax. So, and we've gotten pushback from the state for the fact that our town has not collected this in the past. And so we will begin collecting this. We are having a revaluation of property taxes, which I think most real property taxes, which I think most of you are aware of. And we have consultants that we've hired to undertake visiting every property in town. Next year, most of that will be happening, right? So as part of that revaluation process, we've hired those same consultants to help for the first time that we start collecting the tax for business equipment, that they will help business owners, figure out, what the paperwork is and what the value is of that, their equipment and all of that. So, so just so you know that this is kind of an early warning for you, because this tax will not be collected until 2027. The time of our revaluation all the values will be as of April 1st, 2027. But because our consultant KRT, they're doing Bangor right now, so I don't know when they'll get to us, but because they will be talking to all of us, we wanted you to be aware that this was gonna be happening. And I know that there's confusion and concern about what is personal property, what is taxed. And so, Mr. Sullivan has agreed to come and talk to us about that. So Steve?
You don't want to do any of this first?
No, I don't want to do anything else first. I want him to be able to leave.
Yep, I agree with that. Thank you very much.
And anybody else who wants to. So.
Do you want me to stand or?
Or.
I can stand. Standing all day.
Jackie, would you tell us how the audio is for you?
Steve, could you say a few words?
Sure, how's this? Is that?
That's perfect for me. Yep, that's perfect for me. Thank you. Thanks for checking.
My name is Stephen Sullivan. I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Division at Maine Revenue Services. Part of this whole discussion about personal property taxes came up. There was a town that had a policy that they were not going to collect personal property taxes on any business that had a value of less than $1 million in personal property, which in effect was one business in town was taxed and no other business was taxed. And that made it in the paper, and that brought it to the attention of people. And we at Maine Revenue Services reached out to every municipality, so 482 municipalities, all received a notice from, or a letter from us reminding them of their obligation under the Constitution to collect personal property tax. And that there is no provision in statute or in the Constitution that allows a municipality to create an exemption on their own. So they can't exempt you from the personal property tax. That is under the power of the legislature, not the municipality. Just like anything else, they can't make your homestead twice what the state statute allows. That's not allowed. They have to maintain it at what the state statute is. So we reached out to the 482 municipalities. We also looked at the municipal valuation return we received from the municipalities. We can receive that every year beginning in after commitment. And we found that there were around 60 or 65 municipalities that did not report personal property on their municipal valuation return. So the state tax assessor asked me to reach out to all of those 65 communities and offer to discuss with them the collection of business personal property. So that's part of what I've done. And I have gone out and spoken to municipalities, small plantations, fairly good sized towns, and discussed the obligation and reminded them that that is part of the state constitution and they are obligated to collect it. Simple as that, as far as we're concerned. Part of this is, there is always the question, well, if we don't collect the personal property tax, what's the result? What happens? And for the select board and the assessors, they are violating their oath of office because they agreed to uphold the Constitution and all of that. So that's part of their responsibility. And in order to be equitable with all the other communities around you, if you do not report personal property, then we at the state level impose a levy on you in your state valuation. So we come up with a figure looking at some surrounding communities, get an idea of what they collect for personal property. And we say there, that's what St. George should be collecting as well. And we add that to your state valuation. And that does affect your revenue sharing and the reimbursement for education funding and also the distribution of the county tax. So those things are all tied to the state valuation number we develop. So as far as the personal property goes, I hesitate to say this, but there is no distinction between an individual's personal property and business personal property in the Constitution or in state law. Yet. That is all taxable. There was a bill introduced this year to raise the exemption amount on the individual's personal property from $1,000 to $5,000. So if you had an item that was valued at less than $5,000, it would not be taxed. The taxation committee changed that law, amended the bill that was put in place to fully exempt the individual personal property. And that came out of the committee as ought to pass. We are waiting for the legislature to vote on it to see if it becomes enacted as law. So that could, if they do it and vote for it, then that would affect how personal property is to be collected and would limit it to the business personal property. Now, as far as business personal property goes, in the past, in the 90s, the state enacted a program and it's called BETTER, which is the Business Equipment Tax Reimbursement. Right, and this is for personal property held by a business, largely for retail facilities, because that's what this one is geared for. And the reimbursement is from the state. The business would declare their personal property and pay the tax to the town. Right? The value of your personal property will affect your mill rate because now you have more taxable value than you had before, so your mill rate would drop, all things being equal and the budget not going up. Always have to say that. So adding business personal property to the tax base causes the tax rate to drop for everyone else. The businesses who qualify for better can then apply to the state. The town is relieved from most of the burden on this one. The paperwork is on our part at Maine Revenue Services. They apply to us after they paid their property tax, and the state reimburses them for all or part, at least, of the tax that they have paid. So the town of St. George gets all of the tax money, and the state refunds it to the business directly from the general fund. But we do that every year. We begin getting the returns in December. We've just finished up with the last of our returns that we've gotten, and the checks are being sent out to the businesses at this point. We're in August. The second program was begun in 2007, and this is the business equipment tax exemption. And it is geared for anything that is not a retail operation. And by that, we mean someone who manufactures something, someone who has earth moving equipment, that type of thing. Anything that's a service. So doctors, dentists, barbers, what else can we call? Anyone who has an automotive shop are all eligible for Betty. Because they're not a retail operation. By retail, they just assume someone goes to the place, buys something and leaves with it. That's the definition of retail. So everything else is eligible for Betty. And what Betty is it's an exemption. So there is no tax bill for qualified equipment. And the equipment has to have been placed in service in Maine after 2007 to be eligible for Betty. The business reports it to the assessor. No tax bill is generated if it's all Betty, it's all Betty, and they don't get a tax bill, never see a tax bill. The town then reports the amount of Betty that they had to us at the state. And as long as everything qualifies, and we do audits of the Betty program. As long as it qualifies, then the state reimburses the town for 50% at least of the lost revenue from the taxes. So that just is revenue that comes back to the town. And again, once you get that revenue come back, it's just like your excise tax or revenue sharing or anything like that. It is money that you can put towards the general fund to reduce the tax burden. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to explain. I did hand to the select board, there's 3 bulletins that pertain to personal property and its administration. One is bulletin 2, and bulletin 2 is called, it's referred to as a 706A request. It used to be called the doomsday list, back when we were kinder and gentler. It was a list that you had to produce for the assessors on April 1st. You could say, so you used to have to come in and tell the assessors how many cattle you had, how many blood stock, how many chickens, and all of those things, and they assessed your taxes based on that. 706A is a request that they send out and ask you for information. Any taxpayer, at any time they can use that instrument. And they ask you for certain things, so they could send it to all of the businesses in town and say, look, you are required to tell us what business personal property you have. If you fail to respond to a 706A request, the assessors have the right to make an assessment on it based on their best estimate. So they could say, well, I think you had $20,000 of business equipment. And because you have not responded to a 706A request, you have removed your ability to seek abatement from the assessors. They're no longer obligated to address any abatement requests that you make until you provide that information to them. The other ones I gave are bulletins. There's bulletin 27 and 28, and they deal with Better and Betty. And they explain the program. They are available on our website, on the Property Tax Division's website. Absolutely welcome to read them. They are written in language. They're not written by a lawyer. Well, they actually kind of are written, but he's a lawyer, but he's not acting like a lawyer. He's written it so that you can actually understand it, as opposed to reading it in statute. So that will explain, for instance, the 706A request, how they do it. There's some sample letters there. There's an explanation of Betty and Better and what qualifies and what doesn't, and what the obligations of the taxpayer is, and also the assessors. And yeah, I did mention the levy. Okay, so I'm all set. I think I've covered anything, unless you guys have questions.
So we have a fair number of people involved in fishing
Yeah.
in our town. And as I understand it, fishermen are exempt from paying. Is that correct?
They are a non-retail facility, yes. As long as they don't make their predominant money from retail sales. So if you're a fisherman hauling traps, every bit of gear that you have is eligible for Betty as long as it's been placed in service since 2007. And I can't imagine there were many lobster traps out there that last 18 years. Maybe there are, I don't know. But if you have them, if you have the traps and you report that information to the selectmen, then the revenue that we would send back to the town, fairly significant, particularly, I mean, if you're talking someone who has a lot of lobster traps, that's gonna be a lot of value. And that potential lost income to the town that we reimburse at 50% or greater, it can be greater than 50%, depending on the percentage of personal property you have, can go up, but it's at least 50%. That comes back to you, that comes right off the top of your budget, and you don't have to collect it from the tax. Yes.
What's the administrative cost for all this handing money back and forth?
Actually,
It sounds to me like we're losing money by trying to save money.
with any exemption that we have to reimburse the town for their mandate costs, we call it.
What
So
if you
we-
didn't have the personal property tax established? You'd probably be revenue positive rather than go through all this rigmarole.
You're obligated. under
Was
the
that
const-
a,
You're
was that a
obligated,
law voted on by the legislature? You mentioned the Constitution.
yes,
So was it a law? Someone put a bill in and it got voted on?
no, it has been part of the Constitution, it's Article 9 of the Constitution,
But
Article 9,
yes,
Section 8.
as far as collecting personal property tax, that was a bill passed by the legislature. And as he said, which was news to me tonight, we've been talking about the business equipment taxation. But as he pointed out, personal properties, which is just stuff, personal property is stuff.
If I heard it right, you have to pay money for all the lobster traps you have and then you get it
No.
back?
No, in the case of,
I don't go lobster
Yeah.
traps.
in the case of a business that's not retail,
Now, I have a business.
Yeah.
We're a very small percentage of it is retail, but we're mostly processing crabs.
Yeah.
So.
then you're a manufacturing facility as far as that goes. You would be exempt, and any equipment that you have, as long as it's newer than 2007,
Say that again.
it has to be newer than 2007.
Well, what if it isn't?
Well, then it's taxable, but it's probably depreciated by a considerable amount.
2007.
So if any of that you report to the assessors,
It's newer.
they do not send you a tax bill.
When did this all go through?
Betty was enacted in 2007. The personal property has been in place for decades.
Is it possible this can be repealed?
It's always possible. I will say that the taxation committee this year looked at the individual's obligation. And they voted ought to pass that exempts all individuals' personal property. That has not passed in the legislature yet because it hasn't gone before them, so we'll see what happens. But that's one thing they did. The practice in most of Maine, in almost all municipalities, everything that I'm aware of in most all of them anyway, is that they only deal with the business personal property and they do not deal with the individual personal property, because there is an exemption amount in the individual personal property. You can't tax you can't tax the furniture. You can't tax their
And the
hand tools.
business?
No, this is
No,
on
this is in
individual.
your house.
Yeah,
The
anything in your
personal
house.
property
Is that what
stuff would be
caused
our
it?
personal.
And it hits. And nobody wants to look in your house to see what you've got, so that's why it's exempt. And any item that's under $1,000 in value, that figure has not been updated since the '70s. So there was also an attempt to raise that exemption amount. But the taxation committee opted to go with the other
You
route.
said our senator was here?
So Ann Matlack and I talked about this last fall, and she's on the taxation committee, our House representative.
I would request a repeal of this nonsense.
So, but one thing I just wanna say is that I think partly because she had been unaware that there was the personal, like, let's say your grandmother's engagement ring
I
or something.
email our senator or representative every day. so.
Yeah, so they have pending legislation to get rid of taxing people's stuff in your house. And
Oh, certainly.
by the time that we would be collecting anything, it seems likely that that will go away, since nobody's even doing that anyway. But I think the important thing for people to understand is that for the business equipment that would be, you would be obligated to report what you have. And then if you're a fisherman.
What if
not-
what if,
not-
like he said, a manufacturing facility, you still have to report it?
Yes, you have to fill out the form saying, I have 800 traps, or I have, a refrigerator
That
and
sounds like more
tables and chairs,
administrative
or,
cost.
you know, if you're, an IT person with a business at your house, I have a desk and a computer and a printer and a lamp, or whatever you're reporting to the IRS. I mean, people are getting, right, you're reporting stuff to the IRS and you're depreciating that equipment, so it's based, I assume, same stuff that people are.
I'd like to go back to my first question, if you know the answer. What are the administrative costs for all this?
On our end for doing Betty reimbursements?
And the town,
Yeah,
that would be a good number to know.
the town. It's a requirement for any exemption that we are reimbursing them for. The town gets what's called mandate money, so they get
Yeah,
a
but
figure for every
Everyone
Everyone
how
that they
much do
process.
you get paid and everybody else in the office and like that,
Sure.
all that cost, how much is it?
really don't know what we can.
That's what I wanna know.
Philip,
I don't know it what
I'll stop
portion of
now,
our
let
budget is.
somebody else have it.
yeah, Philip, you had a question?
I was just wondering if the town of St. George or any other municipalities in the state have ever faced any ramifications for non-compliance in the decades that this has been around.
We do add a figure to your state valuation. That's all there is in statute for us.
Has that happened?
So,
It happens every year.
so the bottom line about that is, if they're figuring out a ballpark or whatever, they're guesstimating based on very little information, because we haven't been telling them, then we may well be being taxed unfairly because they don't know what the equipment is that's here. So, for it to be fair and equitable to everybody, which is what the standard is for governments to tax people. They need to know what, what the business equipment is, and then they've got these, either you could be exempt or you're gonna get a reduction for some stuff or money back for. So for the retail people, they do have to pay the tax and then get a check back.
Right, they pay it up, that's an older program, it was played in the place in the 96, I think it was. So that's been in place that long. And we process and we send out millions of dollars of reimbursement checks to the individual, it goes right to the business, doesn't come to the town.
So, and also because when the state values the value of St. George, every real property parcel and all the business equipment in town, what they figure that whole pie is affects what our school gets and what we owe the county in taxes. So for our share that we owe the county to be accurate, we want the valuation to be accurate. And for us to get as much as we can for the school, we want this figure to be accurate.
Or monies that could go into the general fund.
Right.
And that would help keep the mill rate down. So it's a cost either way, it's effort on your part, but it comes back to the community in many ways, because right now, we have not a good handle on what they're really assessing us. Because we haven't been putting in any things to make a judgment.
I'm looking through, every year we get a state evaluation comes to the town. And at some point, it says no tax levy and
Yes,
$2,500 in personal property taxes. What is that? Is
I
that,
didn't get a chance to look at
is what is assessed to us by the state?
$2.5 million in personal property, yes, that's what we assume you,
That's what-
based on what we see around this town, other towns that report personal property, that's what we look at, so we look at Cushing and whoever else that we can look at that has a similar type of community. And that's what they're reporting for personal property, so we add that to your state valuation, so $2.5 million extra.
So that's what you're assuming that we would assess in this town in personal property.
Right, and maybe when you do your assessment, you might find that you only have 1.5 million. We don't know. We're doing our best job at estimating.
And has this figure just always been put in there every year, for year after year after year?
And it
Everything.
has probably increased over time as well, because we expect inflation to have affected you.
But it's
Like
just
everything.
there, and we kind of just never knew about it, and
Yeah.
we just go along and say, okay, whatever. And just keep doing what we're doing.
Yes, it has been there. As long as I'm aware of.
That number or a
number.
A number, not that number.
It may not have been, no,
Right.
it could have, it likely has increased over time because it started at one figure and now
Right.
with inflation, we've added. And kind of, one theory some people espouse is that if you make it high enough, it'll make it hurt enough that eventually you will report. We don't
Oh,
do that,
great.
we don't do that, that's not what we do. You know,
Has anybody ever put in a bill, at least giving towns an option to opt out of it? Is there
yes,
any
there's bills all the
legislation
time, there are bills all the time that go in about personal property, certainly.
that we don't have to do this for the taxpayers of our town when we don't want to do it?
Thank you. Yes, but you have to have the approval of the legislature to do it. Because Article 9, Section 9 of the Constitution says that the legislature will not give up the power of taxation. It's their purview, and it's not given up to the municipality, it has to be at their discretion.
Yeah.
So the town can't even vote to say, well, we're just gonna, whatever the state sends down, we're just gonna pay it and move on and not start all this paperwork and rebates and exemptions and Betty programs and
Well, are you asking, can the town just
No,
legally choose to accept the levy instead of collecting the tax?
No, we can't, I know we can't.
no,
Very explicit in everything you read the state with exclamation points. You have no control. You cannot do.
well, it's like a restaurant, they can't not collect sales tax when people eat there, they have to. We're just like that, we have to collect the tax the legislature passed, like it or not. You know, I lived for 30 years in a state that does not collect this tax. You know, but, so I looked it up, 38 states do collect taxes like this, and 12 do not. You know, I would have thought that you pay sales tax when you're, buy a hammer, if you're a carpenter, that's taxed one time, you're done. But no, they, you know, they're taxing it
That
every
too
year.
is being taxed over and over and over and over.
But it's the law, so we have to do it, and if people wanna write their representatives and say, you should do away with this, they are clearly planning to do away with part of it. So maybe they'll do away with the whole thing, but until, you know, we're stuck with it, and, you know.
And I will say, if you get into that fight, you're gonna be in the fight with places like, Bath, with Bath Iron Works, because a huge part of the tax base in Bath is the equipment at Bath Iron Works. And you're gonna be looking at the city of Portland and Bangor and a lot of bigs, they have a huge amount of their value and taxation comes through the business person's property. So just throw that out for you as part of the consideration.
Well, I know that almost all of the communities around us already do this. Rockland and South Thomaston and Thomaston. I don't know if there's anybody here who does business in another town and pays this already, but we have had people attend these meetings in the past and tell us that it is not an onerous amount. Obviously, it's something you're not paying now, but. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
when these people buy their equipment for their businesses, they're paying a huge tax. How does the state justify re-taxing these people every single year?
I am gonna take a little bit of a Fifth Amendment thing here. I work in the executive branch of the state government. All we do is administer the laws that were given to us. The question you're asking is a policy question, and I'm not involved in policy. I know that that's a cop-out, but I'm not the person to ask that question of. I have my own personal opinion of it, but
Irene?
sometime with a beer, I'd tell you, but not.
That I'm understanding it correctly. So essentially, you're saying we have $2.5 million in personal property that we should be taxing, so you're giving us $25,000 less in financial assistance? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, you're not taking in any money for that,
Right.
so you're foregoing that revenue,
We're going.
right? So there's nothing coming in from your taxes to go into the general fund at all. And that $2.5 million affects your revenue sharing, the school
Okay,
subsidy and your county taxes, because it's all part of the formula that they use to distribute the revenue or to distribute the tax at the county level.
So that's the way in which we're being
Okay,
penalized.
so this $2.5 million that we're not collecting taxes on, you're saying we could be collecting taxes on that, so therefore we're gonna give you less money.
No. If
For the-
you,
for the-
the value is part of the consideration of how revenue sharing is done. So if your value goes up, then that can affect your revenue sharing, depends on what everyone else is doing at the same time. So if everybody's goes up, it may not make any effect at all, but it can make an effect on that revenue sharing, which is not something that we do in MRS.
Okay.
That's not our part, that's the treasurer.
So hypothetically, if we everybody reports their personal property, their traps and all of that, everybody reports it. And we actually do have $2.5 million in personal property,
Mhm.
but $2 million of it is exempt.
Yes.
Then how does that affect our valuation?
Your
does-
valuation does not include the value of exempt property.
Okay, so
So even like a school or historical society, those are all exempt, they're not in your state valuation either. So in real estate side, anything, the town office, none of that is part of your estate valuation or your local assessed values.
So essentially, all of this exempt property could, and if you actually reduce the amount of the town's total value if we start reporting it.
Possibly so. I will say that the part of the Betty exempt property that is reimbursed is added into your state valuation, so that 50% of the value of that is added to your state valuation, because you did get income from it. But the rest of the other 50% is not part of your state valuation.
So like for fishing, for traps, you know, it's in there, and because the legislature has decided they're gonna make that industry exempt, they would pay us 50%
Well,
of what
at
we're,
least 50%.
of what we're
Okay,
foregoing
so,
because of that policy. of
so
the
right
legislature.
now, essentially the state feels that we are foregoing $2.5 million in
Value, not
in
tax.
value of personal property. If we have $2 million that is exempt, the state is gonna reimburse us for half of the tax that we could have collected,
Yes,
but it's exempt, so the state just gives us the money for that.
yes.
So there would be income to the town, which would reduce people's,
Yeah, I just wanted to make
property
sure
tax
that
burden
I
overall.
understood that.
Yeah,
Are
Because I-
towns, taxing short-term rentals via, personal property tax, and if so, are they exempt?
We have not seen that yet.
I thought all
what do you
business,
mean you haven't seen
I
that?
thought all business
We
was,
have short,
It's not.
short-term rental falls into this area where are they getting enough money for it to, you know, is it someone who rents out a place and it's rented 2 weeks out of the year and the rest of the year it's not? Is that really a business? And then that's a whole part that has not developed in tax law yet.
But
But
we,
if you look at like,
Pretty
I don't,
tough to-
Camden has. Camden does not tax the equipment at Airbnbs or whatever the other ones are. Verbo or whatever.
but what if a property is owned solely for the purpose of renting it out by
Then,
a company?
right, then it is a business and the furnishings and everything in it is business equipment.
So just like an inn, for example.
Yes, motels, hotels, those are all, they're the same thing. But what the problem is with short-term rentals is how much of the year is it used? Does it become primarily used at, you know, that's a whole part that has not developed because it's fairly new still.
But for the ones that are exclusively rentals,
Then they're business.
then they're a business.
Yes.
Where does the money come from that you give to the town? If we increase our valuation,
It comes from the general fund,
and the general fund come from what?
your income tax, excise tax, sales
So,
tax.
if we increase the town valuation because of this, our income tax could go up. Now, it may probably be incremental for each person, but still, money's gotta come from somewhere.
That's true of all exemptions.
I know.
It's
Now,
true, it's true of
I
all.
just got a quick question for the
Yeah.
town, whoever this wants to speak. If we don't do this and our valuation doesn't increase and we lose out on taking someone else's tax money, how are we doing now? Are we okay? Can we get along without it?
We don't have an option.
Huh?
there's no option.
Let's just use, let's say
No,
hypothetically,
look, we took an oath, every one of us swore to follow the law.
how
We're
come,
not
why is
going
it
to-
just coming up now then?
Because they came after
This
us.
started in 2007.
No, last year they came
We've
after us.
been violating the oath since 2007.
Apparently
Apparently every
so,
select
yes.
board for 2 decades, I guess, has been oath breakers.
Well, but they came to the people on the select board last year and we decided to follow the law. So that's what's gonna happen.
So
And it's
Just-
not like we think this is a great idea. Don't,
just
don't.
back
think
to my
that.
original question, is the town okay if we didn't get the money?
Well, the town's
going
been
to-
okay. We're not getting the money now.
Essentially,
So we're doing all right then.
The town will be okay regardless, because the budget, whatever budget is passed, property taxes will be set to raise it. So it's really up to taxpayers to decide, to look at their
Yeah.
property tax bill and decide whether or not the town is doing okay.
There was, you did mention assessment.
The
We had an
revaluation.
assessment like a couple of years ago where I worked. And tax, I think it was a couple of years ago, and the taxes
Well,
increased like
12 years
6
ago.
times.
12 years ago.
Is it gonna be, no, it wasn't 12, because we haven't been in that location for 12 years.
Well, it's possible that your
Because you changed
individual
location.
business.
Because you changed.
Yeah,
location.
we went into a new location about 5 years ago, and it was a year after that, so 4 years ago. Now, the person that came in and looked around and our taxes went up 6 times, which is fine. I understand we have to pay taxes. Did they look at our equipment, or is this something new?
Did
No,
your assessment go up 6 times? Because
Sorry?
was it your assessment that went up 6 times?
Yes, it was $700, now it's like over 4,000.
Oh, your taxes?
the real
The
property.
property tax.
That's not. In the sense that is set by your valuation, but more so it is set by the budget that is passed every
Yeah.
year.
I get that, but I'm just saying, did that include, did they look at all that stuff?
No,
So this
no.
is another assessment
Right.
potentially,
Right.
I report. I guess I'm pretty much exempt anyway, but still.
Right,
But I gotta do some more paperwork.
that's right. We're all gonna have to do some paperwork.
I still favor repealing it.
Can I ask which town wrote the ordinance that started this whole mess?
It's been in place a lot longer than.
I know
It's the town that
the million
provoked
dollar,
mentioned
the $1 million valuation and below.
Oh, you wanna know that one? Oh, okay. I really hate to throw anyone under the bus, but it was the town of Bethel.
Wow.
They thought they had taxing authority, the select board.
I will say it's not unusual for select boards to do this or town councils. I have had other conversations with towns. They say, oh, we don't do anything on business equipment that's less than $10,000. And when they told me that, I said, I really wish you hadn't told me that, because now I know, and I have to tell you that what you're doing is illegal. So.
Well.
And I will also say that we have every sympathy in the world for the municipalities. We know it's not fun. Nobody likes personal property. Nobody enjoy, well, there's a couple of people who are weird about it, if they like it. The rest of us don't like personal property. If I didn't have to deal with it, I'd be very happy. But we have to deal with it because that's our job and that's what the law says, so.
But it does sound like it has the potential for making people's real property tax go down, some, if you have the same budget.
Yeah, given the same budget and all, you are going to get revenue that's coming back to you that you don't get right now.
Does the revenue stay with the town or does it have to go to the state?
When we send you a reimbursement, it's
Oh, it
yours.
goes there first and then,
Well, if it's better, it goes to you first, and then the business comes to us and we reimburse them. It doesn't affect you at all. If it's Betty, you don't send them a bill, and we reimburse the town directly for 50% of that lost revenue.
And then like other stuff, as far as it relates to the whole valuation, it affects what the school gets.
Right.
Or what we other town. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your coming to,
Anytime.
educate us.
anytime. This is what we're supposed to do, so I'm happy to come in town and talk to you.
Steve, just real quickly though.
Yes.
The one thing I noticed here, we have a form that's on the back here.
It's a
of the
sample.
one bullet, a sample. And it's a request for the true and perfect list, as it's called, which is the listing.
Yeah.
And looking it over, it's not overly onerous. You gotta do it one time to start.
Right,
And then after that, it'll be only a minor modification if something changed.
there is a further requirement if you want to be in Betty.
Yeah. Oh,
That there is a application that they have to file every year to be in Betty. And they have to file with the assessor, and then it goes through. The assessor, if you have has the ability to make it less onerous for the business, because they can tell them, they can send the thing out that says, here, this is what you had last year, scratch off what you have disposed of and add anything that you have added this year. And that's what they have to do.
So the really onerous part to begin with really is just to get this forward
year
done
one.
on time in year one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people should know that Jackie Bennett in the upper left here on your screen is our assessor's agent, and she's the person that visits properties to see what they're worth and will be involved in this process. We do have a consultant that we've hired to do the whole town.
We're gonna get assessed again.
Yeah, the whole town is getting revalued.
What was that assessment I had 4 years ago? Was that because
Because you moved, you
Yeah, but, and
went to a
your,
new facility.
yours
yeah, we
probably
spent a lot
won't,
of money too?
yours probably won't change as much as some people's whose property hasn't been looked at. in 12
Can
years.
she fall for me when she comes?
I'm not volunteering you for anything like that. Just, thank you for being, I wanted people to see Jackie. Since you will be, she's the person you would talk to if you have.
So
questions.
Steve, you were trying to leave, I apologize.
No, that's
Yeah.
all.
We have another question here.
What types of businesses are not exempt?
Retail businesses are not able to apply for Betty.
Everything else.
Everything else, services, dog groomers, auto mechanics. The person you process crab, you're a manufacturing welders, those would all be there, all of those are exempt. Anyone who has,
5 million may go down quite a bit.
Yes, I
Yes.
think that's likely.
possibly so.
We don't have as many businesses here as
Yeah.
we used to.
I'll just say one thing. Our payroll tax deduction now is about 20% of everybody's check, so this money that we're gonna get back has to come from somewhere. Just keep that in mind.
Mhm, mhm.
That would be the thing I'd like to see go down.
Well, you look at it this way too, though,
Sorry.
if we can go through this process, maybe ours could be, our tax base reduced. Because other people are doing this elsewhere and we aren't.
There's a lot.
Other people, other towns are doing this and getting some monies back. And perhaps we would qualify
Yeah.
for it.
Maybe. And then this is payroll tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said that the money comes from your taxes. So if the
The
town
taxes
gets more
of the
money
state.
back, it has to come from somewhere.
It comes from
And
state.
probably out of our paychecks. And like I said, probably a small amount from everybody. But
Right,
They don't have a printing press in Augusta, I don't think.
no, it's from sales.
Not building it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Certainly,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.
more than welcome to come. I'll be happy to.
Yes.
If people are welcome to stay to hear the rest of our agenda, or people can drift out as they wish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? Okay. Minutes from the last meeting, did people have a chance to read minutes from the last meeting?
I did, I thought things were straightforward, I didn't have any corrections.
Yeah,
I know Tammy did. I know the minutes as correct.
Okay, all in favor? That's for Wendy's absent at the moment, she'll be back
Jane, what about the annual meeting? Want to talk on, have you had a chance to look at that yet?
I'm forgetting to look at that.
Okay, no worries. Just sitting here still.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate I just want to say that I really appreciate what you do. And God bless you for doing it.
Thank you.
You will attain nirvana in one cycle.
Something was job, so I'm glad somebody thanked us. Steve Thomas. So, oh yeah, I forgot to ask, sorry, Tammy, I didn't have to tell, I could tell you who some people were. Do you know who people were that were talking?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got most of it, because I haven't signed sheet yet. I've been
Still
seeing
got Tammy in my head. Judy, sorry about that, Judy. Okay, so did we have any communications from the public to, discuss?
I had, a couple folks reach out about the, house at the top of the hill by the church. Brian Fields owns it and, he and I set up a plan for him to take down at least the barn, if not the whole spring or summer. I've not heard from him in a while, so he's on my list to reach out to, but I have, it's already on his radar, and so I'm just trying to, lock down the time for that to happen.
Actually, in regard to that house, the power is still going to it, and the attachment point for that power, corner board is ripping off the house. I did call CMP, they haven't come out and unhooked it yet, but if you could maybe contact him and have it removed, because if that falls down, another windstorm or something like that, potentially fire or something like that.
Can you remind us, Brandon, what our ordinance says about buildings that are falling down?
We do not have an ordinance. We asked the planning board to look at it. They said that there's already state statute to cover it. And so, essentially, if it is causing a safety hazard, then the town can then sort of enforce, its, removal.
I appreciate you trying to negotiate with the owner and get something. Yeah, there's no meter on the house. But it does have power coming from the pole. And like I said, if that corner board goes, wires gonna be down on the ground. And I know some other people are concerned about safety, whatever, that's why that caution tape. But this would fall possibly like on if someone's walking to the right side of the road or something. So that's a real safety hazard and fire hazard.
Thank you for putting that on my radar. Brian is not the sole owner, which makes the whole process a bit more complicated.
All right, Irene, you wanna share the warrant and we'll look at it and, come back to that.
Are you want me to just make copies or? pass it around?
Well, we're gonna need to read it. We didn't get it by email today, so.
We did,
Oh,
we did.
It was 5 o'clock or something. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I did.
So I'm not gonna vote or do it till I see everything. So are there any public comments on anything other than what's on the agenda? No. So the comprehensive plan is ready for our approval. Now, tomorrow night is the public informational meeting about this, also in this room. So you've heard about this at the workshop we had, and then one later meeting where they shared with us the changes to the growth areas and the AI policy and a few other changes. Have there been any changes since then, Tony and Aaron? No, okay. So it's really,
If we accept the comprehensive plan as written.
I'll second that.
Assuming there are no changes. that come from-
Yeah, allowing for any subsequent changes,
we
but
have to-
as currently developed.
drafted, okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? That's all 5.
Phew. Yeah.
Yes, well, I mean, really, this group has to have a serious party after it passes in the fall, because they've.
There's gonna be alcohol involved.
Oh,
Might start lying down.
So we'll see.
Your
if
life's
anybody-
work.
See if anybody comes tomorrow night. Aaron's helped me prepare a slideshow of, so. The five of us will enjoy it if nobody else does, and plus the comprehensive plan folks that come. Brian Aponte has indicated his interest to serve on the TIP committee. So we have him,
And has already participated.
yeah, he came to the last meeting, so, I'll move that we appoint him as an alternate to the TIP committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's 5. Brandon circulated the updated personnel policy, which we've been working on for a while. Some of you remember we had a challenging issue arose because it wasn't as clear as it needed to be last year, so that's one of the things you would address.
Yep.
I want to say I appreciate the thoroughness with which you went through there. And things that were there in terms of leave and so forth that was needed to be clarified. So I appreciate the effort.
Highlighting the changes was really helpful.
I had a question, where you talked about lunch and said on a 6-hour workday, why is it 6 and not?
That's what's put out by the state, is
State
that we're
law.
required to be allowed to take a break after 6 hours. Currently, our policy is that we're allowed to, but it is unpaid.
Oh,
And so you end up with people eating at their desk or, whatever. I would just like to change that to paid.
yeah, I was just
Yeah.
That's
confused
why I
because
said-
you have a 40-hour work week and obviously that comes out to
Yeah, it's
something other than 6 hours.
more about like a shift perspective.
Okay,
So if you're gonna do 6 hours, you get a meal break.
and, is the discipline and, separation policies, are they similar to what other municipalities do?
I don't know, but nothing, when going through it, nothing came up as problematic for me that I felt like should be addressed.
Yeah, I'm just more used to the non-government working world where people are at-will employees, and can be terminated for any reason. So I was just curious. I mean, I know in government, it's more common to have this kind of treatment, but I wasn't sure if it was typical of Maine or what. Did people have any other questions?
I didn't know what you put. No.
This has been shared with staff, at least, my drafts, so they would be aware of what you all would see, and folks were on board and were given the opportunity for feedback, and so there's buy-in there.
Was there any need to run it by our attorney?
I don't see the need to.
What are drop holidays?
They're like holidays that are not always,
Not like a legal holiday.
Floating, like a floating
Yeah,
holiday?
Somebody's birthday or.
or if there was like, if a holiday if Christmas was on a Thursday, then you may take Friday as a paid holiday rather than having folks come back in for the 1 day.
Or you could just declare a holiday sometime.
That's right.
Be real popular.
Before.
All right, well, I'll move the acceptance of the updated personnel policy as a select board policy, because that's what they were before. I think, right? Is this the same one or is it not?
This is its own separate policy manual, I believe that you
Okay.
all,
The employee handbook.
Employee
Yeah.
handbook.
Right, okay.
Does it require a vote then?
yes.
Yeah, okay,
All
I'll
right.
second it.
All in favor? 5. Thank you for.
So that will begin July 1st. Thank you.
Great. A report on community calendar. We have 2 of the creators present.
Yes,
Or
I asked,
creator and helper.
Would you like me to jump in, Brandon?
sure, yeah, that would be great.
So on an ad hoc a group of interested citizens got together a few weeks ago to talk about the formation of a community calendar. Conversations about this have been going on for some number of months. With two goals. One is to help increase attendance for all the wonderful events throughout our year here in St. George. Because there are so many events, they sometimes overlap and the competition for attendance can become a problem. So by increasing awareness through a single community calendar, we hope to give residents and visitors a greater opportunity to enjoy everything that we try hard to make available here in the community. And the other goal is to help visitors and members of the community just know what's going on. Just have a nice resource where they can go and see in one place everything that's going on. And so this small group started working on which organizations do we think would participate. So just to be clear, we're talking about the nonprofits in town and only those events that are public facing. So in other words, I'm the secretary at Eureka Lodge. Our stated meetings would not be on the community calendar. They're internal meetings we would organize ourselves separately. But if we're going to host a dinner and we want everybody to attend, that would be a public facing event. So this is the goal: increase attendance and increase awareness. So then the question was, well, where are we going to put this thing? Like, where should it live? And it seemed, with Bill Batty in this group of folks talking about this, we were kicking around, well, should it go on the town website? And then I approached Brandon about this and asked him if he could support that. And he said that it needed to come before the select board for consideration. Now, at the time that we were discussing this, I was imagining it being part of the news feed. And we have since shifted to, I think, a much cleaner, easier way to find community events by making it part of the website where Bill Batty placed it. Discover what's going on in St. George. So it's already on the town website, but in a very separate way. It's not part of the news feed. We're not going to ask town personnel to do anything. They don't have to post anything. It's all automatic. And in fact, I checked it this afternoon and I can see now that 5 organizations have already started posting their events. There are 24 organizations that have been asked to participate. And I'm starting to get email from people asking for help. How can they get more engaged? So I think for the select board, the concern potentially, Brandon, that we need to change the policy about whether we're going to permit non-town events, non-town business related events to appear on the town website is what needs to be discussed or decided here.
I think there are, well, yeah, I guess it depends how you want the community calendar to be sort of hosted. Bill, do you want to share anything from your perspective on that?
It's the select board's purview. I'm just here to do whatever is decided is the appropriate thing to do, and it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. It seems to me like if John is happy with the way that it looks now, it doesn't appear to be part of the town's website.
Right.
We have a link to it, but it doesn't use our logo, it doesn't use our theme, it doesn't use anything like that, and I don't think people would confuse it and say, this is a town-sponsored calendar. And I think that's a slightly different angle than we thought originally when we were in your office.
Yeah, let me add one point of clarification. This is in no way part of the town calendar that exists on the town website where you can see select board meetings and planning board meetings and conservation commission meetings and so forth. We're not, that's separate. What we've done is independent of that. So we're not looking to co-locate pancake breakfasts with the select board meeting that all occur on Tuesday, you know.
Give us some examples of non-town events that you would be considering putting on that type of calendar.
Would you like, I mean, I got it right here on mine.
Okay.
Do you wanna see it?
All the bean suppers.
Or pancake breakfast and
Outside of this town.
No,
Yes.
No,
George only, St. George.
Okay, well, but with that, I mean, aren't those part of the 24 nonprofits?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
But I thought you were saying, John just was saying before that should we have non-town events?
Those are not town government.
Oh, okay,
things.
outside, all right, okay.
So I think the reason this is even discussed in a way is that the select board, we have a select board policy that we're not following already, which has to do with social media. You know, that there have been, but we need to revamp, you know, the policy that we've had, because years ago, the select board said, we're not gonna do Facebook. But then when we got the website that we have now, it has the capacity to automatically post things that are news on Facebook, and we know that in our community, a lot of people use Facebook for quote unquote news, for better and for worse. And so that is something we should revisit, but I think because we have a select board policy that says we're only gonna have town government related events on the town website.
Okay.
There was a question about whether this was gonna be okay with us, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And as John pointed out, the fact that it's under the heading Discover St. George, you know, and it's community calendar, it's pretty obvious these aren't town events, the Masons Pancake Breakfast, or neighbor to neighbors fundraiser for whatever.
Well, there are other third parties that we already linked to under that tab, is that correct?
No, that's.
Yeah,
that's
so
what
for
I-
example, under
Right.
St. George, if you wanted to get the contact information for the Odd Fellows, let's say, there's a link there to, you know, whoever the
Well.
president of the Odd Fellows is and so
So
forth.
my question is, what's the plan to get this out so people understand that this is available? You know.
We've given that some thought. I was going to bring that up when we meet tomorrow at noon. We're having a follow-up meeting of the calendar folks tomorrow at noon here. The idea is we could post a QR code at various locations around town, which would just
Say
open the
what's
calendar.
happening and Discover
You know,
St. George. Da, 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 da.
Here's what's going on in St. George, you know, follow the QR code and it would just open the calendar and there would be the list of events.
And if, sorry.
But again, could that also be then available through Facebook that says
Yes.
that you can get to this?
The calendar itself is just a Google calendar.
Yeah.
It doesn't live on the town website. It's
No,
separate.
understood.
And it could be published in any one of a variety of ways.
But
It's just a Google
I think
link.
it's important that we get the word out.
We could put it on
It's a great
Facebook,
resource.
put it on Facebook, put it in brochures, put it anywhere we want. And we just happened to put it where Bill Batty found a good home for it
Well, thank you.
under
Thanks for
Discover
doing
West and
it so
St.
far.
George.
And I think it would be fine to have a news item on the town website or in the newsletter that this is going to be on the town website, or if people wanna find things,
Yeah,
go to Discover St. George. There's all kinds of interesting stuff there, including a community calendar. You don't think so?
Well, according to your own policy, no.
Right, but our own policy says we're not gonna have a Facebook page, and we do.
So if I may, I'd like to jump in there because
Yeah.
since I've been hired here, I've heard of this policy. Nobody has been able to provide me with a link to this policy that says we can't have a Facebook page. I've not seen it and I've searched for it and nobody can find it.
All right, well, then maybe I just remember hearing that.
I
from
believe
Richard
it was
Davis.
potentially discussed at a meeting.
Okay, maybe it
Yes.
was discussed and not.
I suggest that you have a policy that says where the policies are.
Well, We have that, and
You have that.
we won't get into how outdated that is or why.
What,
Because
what
that,
I don't want is to set a precedent of the select board using its discretion of which organizations or groups, events it's willing to promote.
well, I agree with
If
that.
you are willing to promote one third party's events, then you should be willing to promote all of them, and that's the area that I don't want us to get into.
That could get sketchy, yeah.
So if it's
I'm
all,
concerned about that.
yeah,
We've tried to invite as many as we can think of to participate, and we can add as many more as we'd like. There's no limit to how many organizations can participate.
Yeah, well, and is that, how would people know that on the site itself? Is there something on the site that indicates? that-
No, this is part, I mean, we've been working on this for like 4
Understood.
weeks.
I'm just,
okay?
I'm looking to the future.
These are
that's all.
growing pains, they're good growing pains. We need to be as transparent as possible and say, come and participate in this nice
You're
thing.
way ahead of me, John, so that's fine.
Well, and then I think originally, or early on, there was a desire for the town to be a bit more official of a host. That way, I think that we could do things like promote it and get the word out and so on. However, without right now, the policy does not allow that, and that was the piece that got on the agenda for tonight.
well, the one question I have, I mean, I definitely agree that every nonprofit
Thank you.
that, has events in St. George should be allowed to have things on this calendar. And
Yeah.
then the question is, what about businesses? Cause I know,
Yeah, let's talk about that. I have to be forthcoming here and say that a lot of this is coming from me. I'm the one who's kind of trying to shape how this is to help. And my personal opinion has been that for-profit businesses don't need promotion. They have their own way of seeking engagement with their constituents, the people that participate in that particular business. So if you're selling something, you probably advertise, or you already have a Facebook presence, or you have a way of getting people to know about what you're doing. We're trying to help the nonprofits, especially given the fact that with Eureka Lodge, for example, these events bring in revenue to the lodge that we turn back to the community. The more that we can make these things popular and well-attended, increases our proceeds that we turn around and donate back to our community. So we're trying to increase attendance for that very reason, to help the community. So for-profits are not considered part of this for that reason.
Do you have to be a nonprofit to get onto the calendar?
We're not going, I don't think we should restrict it, but we were starting with nonprofits for the reason that I just described.
Well,
I
don't the
mean-
businesses have the business alliance?
The SUBA is part of this.
I have like a dad's group. We're not a nonprofit, we don't need to be, right, but we organize occasionally and get together, and so, would we be able to?
put on their on Father's Day, we're having a picnic, all dads
Yeah,
welcome or
right.
something.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
I'm cool with that.
If you want the public to come.
Well,
So
I
it
guess
doesn't have to
there,
be legally nonprofit, just an
There's-
organization that
right.
isn't.
There's
created
no
to make money.
reason to exclude anyone. We're not trying to do that. It's just, these are organizations that have a strong presence already, and we're just starting with them.
Well, there could be reasons to exclude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there might be something like hate speech, like neo-Nazi rally. I wouldn't want that on
Well, no.
the calendar. I mean,
Right.
there are certain
That
things
occurred to
that
me too.
Yeah.
are not
but then-
protected by the Constitution that,
Well, those are protected. I mean, that's what.
well,
Skokie
if there's
is in
vi-
law.
promotion of violence within.
Yeah, right.
That's,
You know.
I'm all for going forward with this as you
Now that's
have,
the
and
policy.
then looking at, do we have to change the policy?
Right now, no, in its
Yeah.
current form, because if we are just putting a link under the Discover St. George tab.
Yeah.
Then I don't believe so. If the town had a desire to play a larger role in supporting this effort, then yes, probably.
Then you can look at.
I mean, I think probably our social media policy needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
In general, but, I think this is a great thing, and, if, do you need us to vote on it?
No.
Okay,
Just
All right.
proceed, please.
does anybody feel differently? Does anybody-
No, I think it's great. I
Yeah.
think you see that happen, and if we encounter some bumps in the road, we can work it out, I'm sure.
Well, and like Tammy said, you know, the Business Alliance, if they wanna have a businesses in St. George community calendar, they could create something
Well,
like that.
there already is on their
Yeah.
website.
On their
there already
website.
is,
I
yeah.
mean,
Have you thought about what if you got some group that was clearly against sort of community standards or something and said, we want to be on here, and it was from St. George? How could we say no?
well, I mean,
I just
right
wondered if
now,
that thought had occurred to you, I don't know of any group fortunately in St. George, but say that there was a local KKK organization or something, and said, we're having a meeting. Everyone's welcome, we're a nonprofit. What would you say?
I don't know what we would do about that.
I don't think it's
I
likely,
would
but
say
I'm
that
just
if-
thinking there could be
If
something.
that should ever occur, I would come to the leaders within this community and say, what should we do about this?
I don't think the town could exclude
No, you couldn't exclude.
something like that.
I wouldn't want to exclude anyone, but if it's becomes,
But if it's hate
disruptive, we
speech
might
that
need-
foments violence,
Well,
you
well,
can.
that's another
exclude-
story.
You can
Right, yeah,
exclude.
yeah.
we might
Well,
need to revisit.
hopefully
Speech is
we're-
different than what's on the calendar, but, you know.
But nonetheless, this is
might
a
be
great
some
example of
speech
why
right
the town should probably be hesitant to take on a larger role in
Yes,
hosting
yes.
this, and instead continue to let the group of community members.
Brendan's concern was quite reasonable, and I respect him for bringing that forward. But in the beginning, we were imagining a posting process where it would be posted as news. So for example, here are the events coming up this week as a news item on the town website. And I was discussing this with Brandon and Bill. The three of us were in a phone call, and he was like, we got to talk to the select board about this. This is against our policy. I'm not comfortable with this. And then we shifted gears and said, well, let's make it less onerous for the town staff. I don't want this to be a burden on Bill. We just found a way to make it more automatic. You just put it in the
Just
calendar
on
and then you send people to the calendar and there they all
The
are.
link is on there.
So the posting process was, I think, the problem that we ran up against, which was not desirable. So we shifted gears in our approach.
All right,
Seems like a good thing.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
that's a great thing.
listening to me. I talk too much.
no, we're very grateful that you created this calendar. St. George Days update. Who wants to do it? Me? I should do it? Okay, so, speaking of calendars, the group that planned St. George Days had a meeting, I guess it was last week, recently. And Ashley and Brandon are kind of, the point people. There's gonna be a Google Drive for St. George Days with sign-up sheets for different things, so that people who wanna bring desserts to lobster dinner will go to one sign-up sheet. And people who, are gonna be in the parade or are gonna do a different sign-up sheet.
I was just gonna say that. I would say that we are the point people for the town, and that Emily Chadwick is still doing a lot of the work to organize the parade and reach out to different clubs and community partners. And Ashley and I will help with that reach out, as well as sort of the tracking of it and organizing it.
Right, but it's really helpful to have Google Docs where people know what time things are happening and who's signing up for what. And then anybody that wants to go look and see what time things are happening, or, oh, they have enough desserts, or, whatever, they can find that stuff. So most of the events that happened last year are happening again. The first events are happening on Wednesday that week, including in this room. There's the town hall open house where all the departments will have tables and educate the public on the climate action plan. The TIF, I guess, is gonna be there. Maybe, I don't know. Might be too early for that, the TIF table.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously,
Not ready for public.
Irene and Bill and Katie, the ambulance folks, all of that. Those folks will be here to answer questions from the public. Then on Thursday, pardon, oh, John,
I don't mean to interrupt you, you're on a roll, but these should get on the community calendar.
yes, Ashley is fine tuning the minutes that I drafted from this meeting.
Good.
And then those things will go on the community calendar.
That's great.
So, because there were some times and people that weren't pinned down, like they said, yes, we'll do a bouncy house, and then it was still,
Yeah.
where are they gonna put it? And so Thursday, the Masons are having a lasagna dinner.
Yep.
And the Historical Society is having wine and cheese.
Yep.
Just like last year. And then
In
Friday,
fact, because of the community calendar, the times have been shifted to increase attendance.
see, this
See, it's
is why
working.
it's
It's
helpful.
doing what we want.
That's right. Friday is the dance at the school. I think there's something else I'm not thinking about. Then, of course, most of the events are on Saturday. Their goal is to get back to having something on Sunday, like there used to be the old timers baseball game. So there was discussion about maybe having a rivalry baseball game with South Thomaston or something.
Thomaston, right?
Well, both were discussed, Thomaston or South Thomaston. I don't know, how that. But anyway, so yeah, lots of fun, and, it was a very good meeting with good coordination, so that's important.
Jane, just
yeah.
for the sake of the meeting minutes and all of this, what are the actual dates?
The main fun day is July 19th, Saturday.
Okay, and then I'll work from there.
Right, Wednesday is the 16th. 17th.
Okay, thank you.
The fireworks and all that is on the Saturday, the 19th. So that is what's happening about that. So I think I sent you all an email today about, I heard on NPR this morning that there's been, federal cuts to community paramedicine, including 12 programs in Maine. And since one of the ways that the comprehensive plan has us, trying to reach goals for our town is legislative advocacy, like the letters that this group signs. I would propose that you have me send a letter to our federal delegation, Susan Collins, Angus King, and Shelley Pingree, asking them to reinstate funding for community paramedicine programs. And Katie Jacobs could send me information about last year, just so you know, it's interesting. Last year, they did 210 visits to 16 patients that included things like wound care, blood draws, medication reconciliation, prevention, fall prevention stuff. They definitely have had, people they feel they've been able to help keep them out of the hospital or prevent readmission. And they do have one patient who's very averse to going to the doctor or the hospital, but is willing to receive care from our community paramedicine team. So these are examples of things to put in a letter about why we hope that, funding like this continues.
I move you send a letter.
I'll second. All in favor? Right. And last thing for me is a reminder that we're gonna be doing Brandon's annual performance appraisal 2 weeks from tonight, and we should all be scheduling our appointments with department heads and committee chairs to talk to them about his performance and last. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, our next meeting will have a different select board member present, that's right. So remember to vote on June 10th for the school budget and select board vacancy. Your report, sir.
We signed a bunch of innkeeper,
Yeah.
licenses, last time, but we were missing the Craig Nares, so there's that. It's on the warrant that we're finally able to get our electronic feedback signs ordered and on their way, so. That was exciting. There are, a couple of grants underway for the Resilience Committee that are very exciting and also, resulting in some admin work here at the office.
Quick question, Brennan.
Yeah.
Do you know when the signs might arrive, those portable electronic feedback signs?
No, they've already shipped, and so they will go up.
Like we could have them this summer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
On their way.
I was talking with Jesse Thompson, she didn't say be effective.
I hope so, yeah. I do hope so. And the one that we usually have out needs 2 new batteries. And so we ordered those today, so we didn't make it under this warning, but that is why that one has not been out. They're very expensive batteries, $800.
Yeah.
I think that nothing else pressing at this point. Port Clyde Landing, I don't know if that will come up, but paving is scheduled for Thursday and Monday, so hopefully, yeah, that will happen and we'll get it done right before the grand opening, Thursday at 6 p.m.
Thursday, June 12th, grand opening.
Yes, and so there will be some food and music and remarks to thank the many efforts that got us to this point, and there may be a couple of loose ends we're still waiting to tie up down there, but for the most part, it will be completed and ready to.
It looks pretty impressive when you go down there.
Thursday might be more of a soft opening, if we're, we'll have to still, I don't know if we'll be able to paint all the, anyway, there will be some things like this.
A number of people on Facebook commented on the article that Steve Betts wrote about the Fort Clyde General.
Oh, you're right, sorry, I meant to have the piece there. Steve Betts referred to old plans from the general store that alluded to needing to raise the road. I've been in touch with Veronica, and I shared with you all that, they have new plans that do not require the road to be raised. I confirmed that with her again after this article was posted, and that is still the case. So, the plans for cold storage road will be entered into our overall climate action plan, and with a bit less urgency now that there's not another business depending on. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, planning board.
Planning board met on May 27th. There was further consideration of the Dyser Woods subdivision. There was a determination that there was not a vernal pool on the site. Therefore, the buffer zone was removed, and the ultimate issue about the sprinkler system or fire protection came down to having a note on the plan, which is conditional to an issuance of a building permit. The structure must have a sprinkler system design. So the actual drawing that will be recorded still needs to be fine-tuned. It has not been fully accepted as complete. So that's still pending. Then there was a discussion of the replacement of a flattened cabin on an island in Mosquito Harbor. And the new design is not going to increase the nonconformity. And in general, they had all their ducks in order, but they're gonna come back on June 10th for a proper review. And that was it.
Board of Appeals.
How about that?
Harbor Committee hasn't met
No,
since.
just they're looking forward to the 12th.
Right. Budget Committee, Cemetery Committee.
The cemetery committee is meeting on Thursday at 4:30 here at the town office, and they're gonna have Sarah Okay.
Right.
From Herringham. I'm from Herringham. She will be here to talk about sea level rise related to this is Seaside Cemetery.
Emergency Services Committee has not met. The Comprehensive Plan Committee. We'll do our slideshow tomorrow night and then hope they get a break for the summer until we hear from the state. But they'll decide if they feel like meeting, they will. Conservation Commission.
We'll put it on the community calendar.
Well, when I said I hope they were gonna be able to take the summer off, some people were like, oh no, I think we should meet. I'm like, what?
Jane, you're not understanding. Vacation on the community calendar.
It was Leticia who was
Oh,
saying, oh, we have stuff to do. Yeah, knock yourself out, you know.
Conservation Commission will be meeting this Thursday at 4 o'clock. I guess not the same place as the Cemetery Committee. At the town office. And they put out a good newsletter if anyone's interested in what the commission's doing.
I totally forgot all about Fred dropping these off last Friday.
Oh my goodness.
Exciting reading.
Wow.
Thank you, thank you.
The audit. The punctuated audit. Well, so
So anxious to do this.
since you're handing this out, where are we with the next audit?
I've got to start getting him stuff for the audit as soon as possible.
Good.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance to start sending him stuff this week or not.
Because as I understand it, the school's HVAC grant was dependent on the 2003 audit being done by September.
Correct.
So, No rest for the
He asked me how
weird.
soon I was going to be able to, start getting stuff emailed to him. And I'm hoping to start getting that together later this week. I just don't know. Everything else I have going on this week.
I'm sure you and Brandon will figure that out.
Yes, and we are at least allowed much more time this time around than, we did in the last one, so. I'm very confident.
Good. Shellfish Committee.
The Shellfish Committee. I forgot to write down the date and then had, and that. 2 Tuesdays ago, 5:30, they meet over in Warren at the town office, and because of the recent never-ending rain we've had, they've had to do a lot of closure days on the clam flats, and it's also causing high levels of bacteria due to runoff from the rain into the clam flats. The warden, Jeff Schroeder, is still dealing with some court cases. And he has been able to take care of one, which that person ended up losing their license for 2 years because of clamming without a license and clamming in closed areas. And they're ongoing, they talk about dog race and contamination. So that's what they're doing.
Solid Waste.
They met on May 21st here at the town office at 7:30 a.m. They said the roadside cleanup this year, there were not many volunteers again due to the rain. So they're hoping to have more participation next year. They did get some trash come into the dump, but not as much as they wanted. There are no more dump fees for non-commercial residents. When you bring in large items like appliances, mattresses, tires and things, you no longer charge the fee. That is for non-commercial people. And they started the discussion about the dump hours and the hours of operation and looking at the survey they took, and at that point I had to leave for a doctor's appointment, so I don't know.
Essentially, the survey, which was, had a lot of respondents, I was surprised. Was very happy with the current hours for both the town office and the transfer station at the Simon Seat.
Oh, they're not looking at it.
We don't have any public support.
Oh.
Whatever you say.
Now, what about, yeah, we had an inquiry, speaking of communications, I guess I should have mentioned that we had an inquiry from RD Trash about,
John Young.
yeah, whether we were, gonna start charging them. He was saying that, I guess he'd been ready to bring his dumpsters down for the season. And if they were gonna start charging, maybe he was not going to be servicing St. George anymore.
We have many dumpsters out already. I had asked him to bring dumpsters down to Port Clyde Landing. Okay, so those are the ones.
Those are the ones he was talking about.
Yeah. And essentially, what he was saying is that, what he was referring to is, the solid waste committee has sort of decided to currently this is Ron, look at all possible revenue streams now that we have removed dump fees for residents. Are there any ways to, help offset that and increase revenue elsewhere? And so one of those ways would be folks like R&D, who, pick up people's trash for them to charge them, an annual fee to bring that to the dump. Some towns do. Most towns do. Some towns do not. St. George never has. And he was saying that, if there was a fee, or if it was gonna be done by weight, which we're not set up for anyway, because we don't have scales, that, it may not be worth it for him to continue servicing St. George with being a small area already, so.
You were gonna talk to him,
Talk to John.
yeah.
Mhm.
To try- So where are we with that, I guess? We don't want him to not service the town.
No,
So-
we don't. I hadn't heard, Tammy, I don't know if you have anything to share about that process in general, or where that conversation went.
I don't, they may have discussed it more after I had to leave to go to a doctor's appointment, so I'm not sure what was discussed, but I know they had mentioned about trying to find other revenue streams.
Tara is our, solid waste department head, and so,
Well, maybe,
I can get a
maybe
report
if-
from her and share it with you all.
yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that I would wanna communicate to him. And I don't think I should do it, I think Tara should do it, is that no decision has been made to raise a fee from them, and we'll let him know if, he said he would come to a select board meeting if that were the committee's recommendation, but we haven't heard of such a recommendation, so there's nothing but.
Things continuing as they are.
Yeah, for now.
Okay.
Will you have her do that?
Mhm.
Okay. Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, I was again conflicted with our meetings here with the select board. I can report that they've proceeded with the various ball games and so forth that are happening. I was informed today that the new rack for the kayaks and canoes has been put in place over here in the Marsh area, and that they have been donated 2 kayaks and 1 canoe so far.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're waiting for get the paddles and life preservers.
and appropriate signage. So at this point, we've not moved any boats over to it until all that is set up. So the rack is on site,
Rack
but it
is
is
on
not
site.
open for use yet.
Some of my friends thought I was out of my mind that I voted to allow the free use of kayaks and canoes. And I said, I was the swing boat. I hope I don't live to regret it because
And they had Parks and Rec Committee is to meet now, tomorrow, before our meeting.
okay,
So they moved their meeting several times now, so the next meeting is tomorrow. At 6. Resiliency Committee, the Resilience Committee met on the 28th to review where we are with the letting of the contract for the engineering work in Port Clyde and Factory Road. It was then down to 2 finalists, which was Fuss and O'Neill and Sebago. And the committee also met again.
None of these.
Yeah, this is not public knowledge yet.
No,
Okay.
they met, and they met today to make a final decision, which they'll transmit to Brandon.
Okay.
That's all I was gonna say.
Well, let me know if I need to edit anything over here.
No, there were 2 finalists, that's public.
well, on the resilience committee, since, this is Van's last select board meeting, I'll make a motion that Van be appointed to the resilience committee and the TIF committee as members of those committees.
I'll second it.
Do you wanna do that?
I thought you were planning to do that. I mean, you're chair of the TIF committee.
You can't leave us now.
All in favor?
That's how I became chair of the comprehensive plan.
Scholarship committee. Oh, sorry.
The scholarship committee has met. I have all the financial information. Irene put everything together in terms of what we need to report yearly about the financial status of each trust. We have awarded the scholarships already, and Brandon may want to give further detail, but as we understand it right now, the names are confidential. So, yes, it's done. I will write up the minutes, so we have it, so that we've fulfilled our duty under that policy.
Can you tell us how much money total was awarded?
We awarded 10 scholarships. The amounts of the award are dictated by the bylaws of those trusts. And so there were 3 $7,000 scholarships awarded, 3 $4,200 scholarships, 3 $4,000 scholarships, and a 21.
That's wonderful.
Excellent.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
And I think I can say everyone who applied got something.
yeah, we had 10 applicants and 10 scholarships.
Wow.
Great.
Nice.
Well, I appreciate the work of that committee since we needed to do better than we have been. That's wonderful to know that we are.
Is it a town,
It's in the select board policies, it says that we have, that's where the Parks and Rec Committee is created. And also the scholarship committee. I do think on our running list of things to update in our charter, the most important of which would be having like ranked choice voting for vacancies on select board seats. But I think we need to, formalize that the resilience committee will be a permanent committee and, Parks and Rec and some, to have committees created by select board policies is kind of odd. It seems like either you're a permanent committee or you're an ad hoc committee for a particular purpose, like say the TIF. But it's weird, but that's why none of us really knew there was a scholarship committee.
do you all need to appoint the
se.
members or not?
Well, I was planning to have us appoint the members, but I think that, since you've already met for this year and we had agreed on who would serve this year, we don't need to do that until say March 1st or something. We'll do it for next year.
Why do you think we need ranked choice voting?
Well, not so much
necessarily,
right
right.
choice, but, you know, if, let's say there are 2 vacancies on the select board and 3 people running. That the first top vote getter gets a seat, the second vote getter, instead of now, you know, how we had with Bennett. You, and Brian, you know, Brian,
which seat you want.
Yeah.
you have to run again for a particular seat.
Right.
So it wasn't an option for Brian to just take the seat.
So you'll just remove the seat, they are
The
just
seat.
running for
They would
a.
be assigned to a seat after they were elected.
Yeah, and they'd be elected based on top vote getter, second vote getter, et cetera. That, I think that really needs to be changed in the town charter. So,
TIF committee,
TIF committee, yes.
let's have your name.
It has my name, it should have your name. Well,
He's the chair.
he's right, but that's true, I'm the liaison, and you're the chair, it's just weird for today. After today,
Well, can I
you know-
officially be the chair at this point? No, it's your turn, see, I'm not officially the chair.
Jane show.
So the committee met. And, Jackie Bennett attended, which was helpful. Because one of their challenges has been, figuring out. Which properties in town are gonna be most likely to increase in value enough. That we would wanna capture money and keep money to spend in town versus give it away to the county. And I think the most helpful thing to me that came out of it was for us to just really appreciate that unlike most places where they do a TIF, like in Warren, where they did it because they're putting in a solar farm, or, you know, in Thomaston where Walmart and different things went in, that here we're doing it to make our entire town's economy more resilient. You know, the infrastructure in town, but if we don't have resilient infrastructure, we're not gonna have an economy. If sea level rise continues, so, it's a different program than our consultants have worked on in the past. But, just as important.
Well, yeah, which makes it challenging, and that's
Right.
why the committee went back and forth in terms of what we were doing. And actually now there's a subcommittee to put forth what they think is the best approach. So that we have something to work from.
Right, some districts.
Yeah.
There's kind of a little running list of projects, but unlike these other places where, you know, they have some big subdivision going in or whatever, we don't have, we have just normal projects over the next 30 years. And considering raising roads and different things.
Well, we're thinking of TIF money, a lot of it could go towards matching funds for grants. and so
Right.
forth To allow us to do some of these other things. We have a lot to work on.
And we don't have a meeting date set right now.
No, waiting for the subcommittee to.
Who's on the subcommittee?
George Howe, myself, and Jason Ludwig when he can attend. At the moment, meantime, we're letting everybody know when we're meeting, we just haven't been able to, Stu Rich is not around to set up the meeting with Stu.
Any other business? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Van's last motion was to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Van, for agreeing to stay on. After your for everything. Thanks for being here, guys.